Welcome to the Feng Shui Mastery Show, and today I'm looking at hotels in India. I'm looking at some of the Feng Shui designs, whether it's intentional or not, how those hotels or places of staying over somewhere are actually configured with some of the principles of Feng Shui. And there's quite a selection of places that I stayed in India, and one of the first ones was a houseboat. Now, these kind of places are amazing. A whole house almost is inside that boat. But I have to say that many years ago, I ended up in Kashmir, where I stayed in a hotel, a houseboat hotel, on Lake Dal. And in that particular houseboat, there was almost like a Victorian dining area and bedroom, and I've never seen anything like it in my life. This houseboat was in southern India, and it wasn't adorned with the same meticulous design. Nevertheless, these places are places of abode for many people, and they still have an energy to them. So remember that, even though we're not looking at bricks and mortar, feng shui does really apply to any place of residence for people. So, one example that I encountered in India was the houseboat. Now, the thing is that some of these boats inside they're very basic, and because they're kept in a very minimalist way, I have to say that the design, the colours were a little bit tired. However, if you've never been to India, they're very big on procedure and how they serve something. So, what made up for the energetic depletion in some ways was made up by the people who were actually on the boat serving the customer. And so that's how I would actually look at the transference of energy from people to places and interiors, and from what you see on the interior, in this case the boat, to the people also on it. So you can see that sometimes environments are not as they are expected, and yet the energy still feels good. And it's often because there are people in there who make it feel good. So you can see this dichotomy of people and places, places and people, and what people bring to places that might be a little bit shoddy, but there is still a good energy. So that made me think about this particular interior. Having said that, whilst it was basic, it was extremely comfortable, and I certainly would return to one of these houseboats again. Then moving on to a hotel, I stayed on I think it's the Indian Ocean actually, and this was one of the main features was this infinity pool, and it was fantastic design of this hotel. It used the use of stained glass, as we can see here, to denote some of the tales of the Indian gods and goddesses. And this was found mainly in the Ayurvedic area, not in the main area. However, having water, this whole pool was in front of a restaurant, so you've got people eating, but they're looking out not only on the ocean but the pool as well. And this was mirroring a sense of health and wealth, because the water is moving all the time, plentiful supply of water, um, and then the whole concept of having health and wealth combined together. So it really worked well, and as I said, the use of colour, the use of telling a tale through stained glass was also very effective. This was another place that I stayed where it was more of a family venture, and excellent in terms of design. So here we have, and you'll find this in a lot of don't want to say developing countries because some of the design is quite progressive, not just progressive, but very interesting. I came across this also in Zanzibar, where you have the centre of the house made out into a garden almost, and the use of the light coming from this skylight here. And in some places that I've stayed in Zanzibar, they didn't have any electricity, so they used the light of the moon to shed right across in the internal structure of the property, so that people could study or the kids could eat. And in this case, this is the only other place I've seen it where the clever use of light in the centre, and that is designed for giving light to the plants around the square of the room. And this is quite a familiar sight for some of the Mughal architecture, was having this swing, this hanging swing, which actually was functional, and it was a great piece of architecture really, because it was dynamic. It wasn't static. It actually did move. So you can see that you've got the element of the wood here. You've got the light. So you've got metal element. You've got this movement here of fire with the colours here, red fire element. So you've got a lot of the features of pots with the earth element. So this really was quite an effective design, all square, and square represents earth, because we're trapped often in matter. And then it all both led to gardens outside. The only one thing I would say about this is that when you opened the front entrance, it was directly opposite the exit. And in Feng Shui, they do say that you need something just to prevent that energy from rushing right through and out the other rear. So there you go. That was quite a fascinating design. And then finally, there was this amazing design on a tea plantation. This is just one of the designs. They had quite a couple, and this might have been one of the honeymoon suites. But what a fantastic design that is. The whole rotund, the spherical image. The only other design, or two designs I can think of, is the yurt in Mongolia and then the igloo in Greenland. So imagine how this would make you feel, going up a straight stairs and then in to an all-round room. But it certainly had a great effect because it actually was planted strategically in different areas over the tea plantation. They weren't all bunched up together. And just looking at it demands a different kind of attraction, a different kind of leaning towards your eye. Your eye is going to go round and right to the top. And anything that it's not symmetrical, so it's quite interesting how there is it's asymmetrical, but it's still extremely very appealing to the eye. And so you can imagine that this demands a different aspect of yourself to share this space. And this was one of the same tea plantation. This was one of the pathways leading up to the reception area. So the clever use of the colour, which is a very fire colour, and the design of the stones internally. And finally at the reception there was this absolutely huge pot, and this is a symbol I continue to see all around the world, but especially in hotels, was this availability of pots and nothing necessarily in them at all. So it's a statement. And if you think about what do pots represent, they often represent space. Now, unusually, this is the only pot I come across that actually has a lid. It's got a lid on it. So it's not so much receiving, it's actually a closed pot. And this plantation was an extremely wealthy plantation, very well manicured, the gardens, carefully crafted, and had been there for for many decades, and it was very obvious that it had uh, a design and a shape to it that had actually grown organically, and certainly an amazing energy to all the four different places, albeit very different in terms of architecture, in terms of the style of residence, but nevertheless, each one had a different energetic feeling, and depending on how that was arranged and how it was presented, changed how I felt. So you might want to think now about the times and places that you yourself have been, and what is it that's creating that good feeling factor. That's all today with me on Feng Shui Mastery and Feng Shui of hotels in India.